moment here, and I'll run through these again. I think they will be pretty self-explanatory. So the first one, identity. Am I being asked to represent myself in the system as I am in the real world? Can I be anonymous in the system? Can I make up an identity and live out a different kind of world? Right? The identity matters because all kinds of interactions get defined on how I specify who I am and what I'm doing. The second one is relationships. Is the system set up so that I'm trying to meet new people? A dating service, for example, new relationships. Or am I trying to bring online existing relationships that already have been manifest in the world, in the physical world for you for years? Whether it's your family or your friends, your classmates, or your working professional relationships, right? All of those matter because think about the differences between saying I'm going to provide a service to you that brings you and your family together versus I'm going to provide a service for you that brings all your colleagues together and people that you do business with together. Divergent set of philosophies, interests, and priorities. And the third one is the activities, right? This is interesting to me because some of these activities get set by the folks running these networks, right? So at LinkedIn, we say we are about creating a professionally appropriate context for people to utilize our system. The notion that it's going to be professional makes us make a lot of decisions about what values to put behind certain offerings, what not to allow in the service, and what to enhance to give professionals advantage. The second type of activities characterization, which I think is equally important and is kind of more subtle but really important in this case, is the idea that some of these activities are not defined by the providers of the systems. They're defined by society, right? What is professionally acceptable for me to do in the office on a Monday afternoon may be very different than what's professionally acceptable for me to do, or socially acceptable for me to do in a bar on Friday night. Right? So social norms and the constraints put in by these providers become very, very important variables to measure. Right? So let's go through now and move on to LinkedIn, the basic mechanisms. Right? So now that we've defined those variables, we're thinking about these different terms. There are also some core building blocks that people have been harnessing now for years to create potent businesses. Right? And there are three I'm going to go through quickly, because I suspect you all have some familiarity with them, but I'd like to boil them down into three that I think are most important. The first one is going to be the concept of virality. Right? Virality, simple idea, the idea that one user can beget more users, can beget more users. Right? What's interesting about this in a business sense, a mechanism that becomes very potent, is that this means your customer acquisition cost can be virtually zero. If your users get your users for you, it's an amazingly interesting business proposition, right? And if you think about Web 2.0 companies, this is a lot of the underpinnings for how these services get started and how they're tuned to optimize for this benefit to the company. The second one is network effects. And I don't mean just using the word network, right? I mean true network effects, the definition that when you have one user, not such a valuable service. When you have two users, still not that valuable a service. But as the number of users go up, the value for every one of the users increases. Right? I often run into people that say, wow, LinkedIn's gotten really valuable in the last year, in the last 2 years, pick a number. It wasn't so valuable for it. What they're reflecting on is the fact that as this network grows, the value grows, because all of a sudden you have a lot more at your disposal simply by virtue of the fact that more people are on the service. And the third one, the third mechanism that I'd call out is this notion of getting user-generated content. We all know that creating content is a very expensive proposition done in a traditional way, but if the more users coming on the site are all creating content, and that content has value, in the case of LinkedIn, it's high-quality content because it's your professional reputation, it's your professional identity, and it's your professional interest in activities, that content can exist on the site, but the content is created by the users at a very low-cost proposition compared to old media and old information models. And what I'd like to suggest is that when you look at companies today and you critique